Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you that is effectively my full version review of Call of Duty Vanguard. I was lucky enough to be invited to an early preview event by Activision so that I got to play the entire game early, multiplayer, zombies, and campaign. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised at how much the game has improved since beta. I will admit that I didn't play the beta a whole lot. I've been kind of going through some health problems recently and my hands have been hurting and whatnot. So when I played the beta, I played 3 or 4 games and I wasn't very impressed with what was going on. I was very frustrated with it and I decided that it wasn't worth risking hurting my hands to continue to play this beta. So coming into the full version, I didn't have my hopes very high, but I was really happy with a lot of the changes that Sledgehammer Games made to Call of Duty Vanguard, which we're going to talk about a lot in today's mostly positive video. You could always use my creator code in the Call of Duty store, which is just Driftor. It's got to be all caps and the O has to be a 0 like on the number pad for some kind of reason. That's the only way it'll go in, but if you put in that all caps Drifter with a 0 and spend any money on microtransactions, I'll get a little support, though that does make this video technically sponsored by Activision. Alright, let's talk about why I think Call of Duty Vanguard has improved so much since the beta or alpha, and the number one reason is that the overall gameplay speed seems cranked up. Most of the Call of Duty Vanguard that I played, which was in the alpha, was a very slow-paced, methodical, Champion Hill kind of thing, and it wasn't very exciting, it wasn't very energetic. And then we played some 2v2s, and then I played a little bit in the beta on Red Star and Hotel Royale and a couple of these kind of maps. And while they were frantic and they were chaotic and they were definitely busier than the 2v2 modes, they still felt a little bit sluggish. It felt a little bit kind of like Modern Warfare 2019 when the game first came out day one. They just took the engine, didn't really change anything, and put the World War II skin on it. However, it seems that Sledgehammer Games has changed the movement speed very slightly, some of the strafing speed, ADS speed, climbing, mantling, a little bit of time to kill, tweaking, maybe the slide distance, just a whole bunch of very small parameters that give you like a 5 or 10% boost on anything that you're doing in the game, and it just makes the gameplay speed way faster. There's also some perks like lightweight and stuff you can use, and double time and bayonets and crazy things you can put on your guns to move even faster if you want to. But the point is, the game now feels kind of like how Modern Warfare 2019 is post all of its patches. It feels like a game that if I want to play aggressively, if I want to go hard, if I want to push spawns and just kind of like ball out, I can do that. I really appreciate the new gameplay speed. I didn't like the slower pace that we had before. I didn't care for the mounting, but all of the little changes that they've done have made the game a lot more fun, a lot more playable, admittedly a lot more cartoony and less realistic, but that works a lot better for a video game. Perhaps more important than the gameplay speed is the changes in maps and visual fidelity has been enormous in my opinion. So there have been significant color palette improvements and lighting improvements to just about every map on the game. The enemies are no longer invisible at certain distances. A great number of the maps are no longer quite so dark or quite so smoky. There's a lot less. Well, interestingly, they added an option to where you can turn off depth of field for that ranged motion blur kind of thing that would obscure enemies, which of course I immediately turned mine off on PC to have clearer vision. I hope that they have this option available for consoles. Turned off my weapon motion blur and all that kind of stuff, and pretty much immediately got much better visual fidelity. They even have the option to turn down your camera shake somewhat so that your screen's a bit more stable, and of course I took advantage of that. And these are all great options. It's kind of becoming a pet peeve these days when I play a new FPS game, and all the devs think they're clever by adding motion blur to everything, and smoke to everything, and gas here, and lens flares there, and this, you know, fake depth of field, blurring things at far and near distances like it's a camera or something. Very frustrating, makes the game difficult to play. So you turn all that off in Call of Duty Vanguard, at least on PC, and your visual quality just goes up tremendously, like an order of magnitude. It's so much easier to see enemies and fight and push, and just in general, the maps have been cleaned up a little bit. They're a little bit less dark, they're a little bit less over or undersaturated, the colors are a little bit better. They are still the sepia World War II maps for the most part, but it's all better and it looks good. Another major benefit is that there's now a huge map variety as soon as the game comes out. So last year, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War had, I don't know, 4 or 5 real multiplayer maps when it launched. This one's gonna have 16 and then 4 more 2v2 maps. 16 maps is a lot to launch with for a modern Call of Duty game. We haven't had that in a long time, and what I'm most happy about is that there's a huge variety in the maps. Yes, we still do have some of the dark, dank, claustrophobic little maps that you probably all saw and played in the beta, but we also have big, bright outdoor snow maps. We have bright desert maps. We have a lush jungle that's really bright. We have a raining jungle that's a little bit more blurry and muddy and kind of messy. There's all these indoor and outdoor environments. There's just a huge variety of maps that I'm really happy with, and I'm also happy with the color palette variety in the maps. While I will admit that the majority of them are this depressing World War II gray drab kind of thing, there's 4 or 5 standouts that are not, and just having that variety makes the game way better. On top of this, the map destruction is better implemented on some of the new maps than the old ones. It is still a bit gimmicky, it's not the world's greatest feature. However, I did find myself actually using it in multiplayer to my advantage in a couple of the new maps. I was creating new sight lines, little grenade holes, which of course I missed my grenade though and it bounced back and hit me in the head and killed me, and all sorts of unique flanks and little things, and I got surprised by people busting through walls that I didn't really know were destructible. But it was better. In an actual multiplayer match with real people going on some of these maps, the destruction was quite nice. It was a noticeable improvement to base Call of Duty. I feel like the maps that they gave us in the alpha and the beta had the worst and most boring of all possible destruction areas, so it's going to be a little bit better in the full version of the game. It's still not like a radical new feature. It's not going to be like, oh my god, these wood planks are so... No, but it's going to be pretty fun. Moving along to other things that have improved, the weapons have been improved a lot as well. So the developers initially went with this very realistic World War II kind of tuning, where the weapons would be insanely loud, they would kick really hard, and most importantly, they would eject a lot of gas and a lot of muzzle flash, or muzzle flare, which is very historically realistic. A lot of these old guns do blow out a ton of gas, they do kick, they're very difficult. I've shot a number of them, they're difficult to handle, they're not easy weapons like modern assault rifles. However, when you put that in a video game, it feels like you are fighting your weapon sometimes instead of mastering it, or once you start shooting, you can't see your enemy for all the smoke and muzzle flash and stuff, and that can be very unfun. So Sledgehammer has taken a less realistic approach. They've scaled back on pretty much all of those things. So now the weapons have a little bit less recoil, they're more manageable, but most importantly, they have a lot less smoke, and I'd say about half as much muzzle flash. There are definitely some bigger and louder guns than others, but overall the entire set of guns has been improved to be much more playable. That also makes them a lot more fun, and there's 38 of them if I'm not mistaken, which is a pretty high amount for a Call of Duty game, each of which seems pretty unique and interesting in its own right. They picked a couple of less common World War II guns to throw in there, so I'm overall very happy with the gun choices, and they did scale back the insanity of the attachments a little bit. There's a lot of different attachments you can put on the gun, a lot of different ammo types and stocks and optics and muzzles, and a ton of honestly crazy stuff that I'm not even going to be able to get into properly on in-depth without like a month of testing. But when I looked at the overall effects on the weapons, especially some of the more negative ones, they were toned down. Some of the guns in the game would have stuff like some kind of ammo will like make your gun deal less damage, but it would make your gun deal like 50% less damage and just be a hit marker machine. Or this gun gives you better range but increases recoil, but the recoil kicks so much if you're not mounted it's not usable. The penalties aren't that bad. They're much more in line with reality, so almost anything I put on my gun I can still use, which I'm very happy with. Moving along, the audio balance is much better in my subjective opinion, and I think I have different ears than a lot of you people. It's not perfect, no doubt, but they did tone down the gunshots a little bit from your particular gun. They toned them up a little bit from enemies, because I did have this issue in the alpha and beta where enemies relatively close by would be shooting me unsuppressed and just not make very much noise. I would really only hear like the bullets when they hit the wall beside me. That didn't happen at all during my full game playtest, so that's a good thing. The audio from my gun was a little bit less overwhelming, and I think that the footsteps were in a pretty good spot. They're not Modern Warfare 2019, running with pots and pans on a metal floor, kind of loud, clacking around. They are more subtle. They are a little bit more difficult to hear. You will have to turn your headsets up, but they are there. They work. They are unique, distinct, and different from everything else, and it's a system that I can understand and use and master, which I'm very happy with. Unless, of course, the enemy's running the Ninja perk, which significantly reduces the sound of footsteps, and Dead Silence is also in the game too. So there's ways to circumvent that, and I think a lot of the community is going to be very happy to hear that Ninja is coming back as a perk. Speaking of perks, I think in our briefing session, the developers mentioned that they're going to be adding new perks throughout the season, so that'll be fun. That's a very rare thing that Call of Duty does. I'm a lot happier with the audio balance. It doesn't blow my ears out when I'm shooting and doing things, and I can still hear footsteps reasonably well. If I wanted to crank my volume, I could probably hear them a lot better. And it's in a good place. There might be improvements in the future, there may be bugs that I didn't notice, but I'm very happy with where it's at now. And then finally, we have two more small points at the end. The new game mode Patrol I found to be very fun. It's kind of like a moving hardpoint, and I mean moving, it doesn't just like magically teleport. It literally is like on a track and it moves around like a train all over the map very slowly, and you have to chase it from place to place. I think you saw the first game in this commentary should have been a patrol game. I had a lot of fun with that mode. That one was unique. That one was different. That one was good, in my opinion. I would definitely play that when the full game comes out, so that's a bonus. I do enjoy the different pacing settings. I can play some of the smaller maps in a more tactical sense, or I can play them in a frantic, you know, Nuketown-esque sort of just frag fest. Same with the big maps, we can do S&D on them, or we can just load in like a 10v10 and just slug it out in sub-base with people shooting each other all over the place. So that's actually worked out a lot better than I thought it would. And I will say that the streaks are overall quite fun. They're not consistent with each other. Each one is not as fun as the other, but there's a lot of them that are really fun, especially the flamethrower juggernaut. I get a huge kick out of just cooking people. That is, if you can get a juggernaut, get the flamethrower juggernaut. That thing absolutely destroys. It's very fun. It feels very rewarding. I think a lot of you are going to enjoy it. And that's it for all the new good things about the game. So as you can see, I'm much more optimistic and much more happy about where the game is going right now. However, do keep in mind, this is the experience of a man who has not played Call of Duty or kept up with the news for 3 months and then had to jump back in and slog it out against some of the best, perhaps non-pro players in the world. And they don't play like people at home. And it wasn't, a couple hours isn't the world's longest playtest. There's a lot of things I didn't see, a lot of things I didn't do, a lot of experiences, perhaps negative ones that I didn't have. And as the game continues, some of its remaining downsides, which we'll talk about very soon, may continue to bog it down. Downside number one is that even with the lighting and the color and the new maps and stuff, there's still a lot of brown and dark gray in this game. The color palette is still pretty grim, pretty muted, and not very vibrant. They're colors that I don't care to look at all day. I typically don't watch films in that color palette. Something about it just kind of annoys my brain. I like bright, punchy colors. So even though we've got more maps that do have bright, punchy colors, the overall picture is still a pretty dark brown one. Even with the improvements to speed and weapons and a lot of this stuff kind of modernizing it, it is still a World War II game. It is set in the bygone ancient era of 80-something years ago combat in World War II, which isn't the kind of game I wanted, and I still really don't want that. I would prefer more modern stuff. So if you don't want a World War II game, if you don't want to use guns that you've seen over and over and over again in a bunch of CoD games, with a few exceptions, they added a few rare ones in here, but a lot of them are the classic World War II guns. If you don't want a World War II experience, well, that's just too bad. This is going to be a World War II experience regardless of what game mode you play. And then finally, it's still Call of Duty. It has all of the strengths and benefits and flaws and weaknesses that Call of Duty has. It's a crazy game. The rules don't make much sense. The networking does weird stuff on occasion. Spawns are the Call of Duty special. The other guy always cheated. The engine always favored him. You never lost a gunfight. You can never get the streak. You know, that's what it is. This isn't a radical departure from Call of Duty. This isn't reinventing Call of Duty. It's just polishing Call of Duty. This is Call of Duty in a nutshell. It's what it's supposed to be. A fast, frantic, casual game where everybody races to level up guns and get big streaks and just show stuff off to their friends without being hyper competitive. And if that's what you want in a video game, great. This is going to deliver all of those Call of Duty feelings that you know and want and love. But if you're sick and tired of Call of Duty and hoping for something revolutionary, you'd probably better look somewhere else. This is not a revolutionary game. It's just a nice, polished Call of Duty game. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful, and I hope you check out my sponsors or use my creator code. If you did learn something useful, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.